There are as many opinions about Dreamworks as Mr. Peabody and Sherman as there are inappropriate jokes in the movie itself, which is like, at least two. Some people see it as a masterclass in storytelling, an incredibly charming animated flick for kids and adults alike, while others despise the film for being too brainy, frustrating, fleet-footed, which apparently means fast, and disrespecting the audience it's meant for. Strong words for a movie about a brainiac dog and his adopted human son. But I come here to propose a secret third thing. I believe DreamWorks' decision to prioritize making this movie robbed us of a potential masterpiece. An animated feature that would have broken new ground with its mixing of 2D and 3D animation instead of relying on one over the other. It would have been called Me and My Shadow. While I'm at it, huge shout out to fellow creator Daz Reviews. It's through his videos that I found out about this canceled gem in the first place. Because, yeah, there are many canceled projects in many different animation studios. DreamWorks has so many, this is their most famous one. And, it kind of comes with the resume. Not every idea screenwriters come up with is gonna end up working in a movie theater for a full hour and a half, so that's a given. Plus, there are tons more reasons for such cancellations, whether it's budget, marketability, project's lack of a coherent vision, creative differences among the team, or, in general, other kinds of production hurdles. But the thing is, most of these concepts never reach the public eye at all. And definitely not in the same capacity as Me and My Shadow, which has somehow amassed a cult following online without technically even existing. Imagine the scenes with Minnie Maui from Moana, but as a whole movie, a bombastic, full-length animated film. Actually, scratch that, you don't have to imagine anything. This is what it was planned to look like. Despite its cancellation in 2015-ish, more and more footage began to spill out online over the years. The announced voice cast was pretty freaking stacked. Josh Gad, Kate Hudson, Tom Hiddleston, of all people as the movie's big antagonist. Sign me up. Oh, and Bill Hader. Bill Hader. He wasn't here as well. He's been in a lot of animated movies over the years, which is a fact I didn't know about. He's making horror movies now, and Cat in the Hat, I suppose. So joining a project like this would definitely fit his portfolio. And that's all without mentioning the premise. It's refreshing, sounds actually unique. I might go out on a limb and say, even today, this film would have been revolutionary. It wanted to incorporate 3D hand-drawn animation to 3D, but in a sense, kind of like in Who Framed Roger Rabbit, just swapping the live-action part with CG backgrounds and characters. Basically the same thing. This novel approach to somewhat visually stale 3D movies at the time had so much potential. Contrasted with movies like Home, that actually did end up getting produced, we start to wonder, what kind of criteria do ideas for films need to meet nowadays to be picked up and made? In a tragic turn of events, Mr. Peabody and Sherman got Me and My Shadow pushed back. And ultimately, it led to that project being cancelled completely after the company began struggling financially around 2014 or so. That's why it pains me so much when I see this. Mr. Peabody and Sherman, they have their own site. You can buy them on Blu-ray, on DVD. You've got all this promotion going for them, and that could have just been my boy Dan. That could have been my boy Dan. Where's my boy Dan? Comparing a synopsis of both movies, Peabody does sound cool. And as much as I hate to say it, I saw it 2 days ago, and it's good. It's very freaky at points, especially for an animated film, but definitely good. Not only is the premise here interesting too, but the acting in the jokes really landed for me. It's got some low-key memorable moments, and overall, it wears its heart on its sleeve. It very clearly shows how much love was put into it. And I don't know, it seems awfully reminiscent of the newer DreamWorks features for me, in terms of overall tone, which is a great thing. Alas, even a concept as cool as this one failed to meet the company's revenue goals for the year. Mr. Peabody sadly underperformed. But I'll talk a bit about that later. Let's get back to Me and My Shadow, and dive into the proposed story of this movie. Surprisingly, we know quite a lot about it. People on the Me and My Shadow Discord, a whole dedicated community scouring the internet in search of any and all info about this long-lost cancelled film, managed to get their hands on a ton of concept art, animation tests, even full-on completed VFX shots with voice acting and everything, the whole shebang. They arranged the clips in chronological order and managed to piece together how the story was supposed to go. And it started a little something like this. Shadow Dan, this little guy right here, is stuck for hours on end every day with one Daniel Grubb, a timid and introverted man with an aversion for adventure, and in general, opening up to new possibilities. The movie would have likely started with a typical day of life of sorts, showing Daniel working at the light bulb factory, going through his menial, everyday motions, all the while Dan, I'm gonna just call him Dan, looks over his shoulder and uses his shadow properties to goof around and pass the time. In a way, he could have been a new approach to a Genie from Aladdin kind of character, shapeshifting and morphing depending on the situation.
Well, I don't know where you're from, but here in America, we tried to get on the TV. Let's do it!
Just like any other shadow, he's forced to follow his caster's routine, and he's bored the hell out of it. This beginning bit would likely serve as a short glimpse establishing the real world of Daniel, his co-workers and neighbors, all the while their shadows are living lives of their own, doing all sorts of shenanigans. It's all pretty standard and straightforward so far. Me and My Shadow quickly reveals there is a whole separate realm called the Shadow World. Shadows are connected to the people they belong to, but don't let that fool you. They're absolutely their own being as well. They have their own separate lives and personalities, which they put on full display when in the Shadow World. It's this kind of an alternate universe where shadows go when they're not being cast. When they're needed in the real world, though, they have to be there. No questions about it. There's Australian cats.
Little kitty cat, wee.
Hey, what's the whiskers, mate?
Sentient dogs talking with disgust about their casters drinking out of the toilet. Dolphins and grandmas. Yeah. The existence of this world is likely the reason some of the info about Me and My Shadow mentioned how even as much as half of the movie was supposed to be fully 2D. Are you kidding me? That's amazing. And so here comes this cool premise. Daniel is fully content with the job that he has. Maybe a bit annoyed and slightly plagued by doubt, but just slightly. And on the opposite side, there's Dan, who desperately wants out of this boring prison of a life. His way of doing so is by nudging Daniel to finally get him to talk to Heidi, Daniel's neighbor, secret love interest, avid skydiver, and honestly, the most box standard part of the plot. Her hobbies and by proxy the desire to impress her are meant to be the catalyst for Daniel to step out of his comfort zone, become more adventurous. And honestly, if this movie was to be revived, it'd be nice to have her have an actual personality besides being daring and having goals in life. Serve more of a role in the movie and not turn into the eventual damsel in distress archetype. But hey, it's a very 90s feeling movie, so as Des Reviews points out, that kind of writing makes some sense. So the animation is very 90s, so has that going for it. Daniel meets Heidi in the stairway, where they talk for a little bit, and she reveals her second personality trait, a love for photography. Concept art shows that almost wherever she goes, she brings her camera with her. Except her own apartment for some reason, because she leaves it behind in the stairway somehow. It's up to the shy and socially anxious Daniel to patch it back to her. As he trembles to ring her apartment bell, it's at this very moment that Shadow Dan finds out he is actually able to control Daniel's body. And as such, he starts playing tricks on him and in general having him do whatever he pleases. The two face off in Daniel's apartment. This incredibly well choreographed scene that's, I don't know, just so creative. I'm gonna gush over this. This scene alone is, I think, the reason why so many people are invested in this movie being made. It's genius. It's amazing. Besides Roger Rabbit, I don't know what else to compare it to. And I love how expressive 2D animation is. How well it pairs with the fully CG environment. So cool. Daniel, understandably so, finds it hard to adjust to knowing his shadow is a fully sentient and separate being. Shadow Dan makes it even harder by turning Daniel's next day at work into a mess, constantly taking control over him and even making him walk away from the job. By walk away, I actually mean drive away, on a scooter, almost killing 6 people. But he does make it home, presumably joins Heidi for some skydiving? Hard to tell, but there's this concept art that supports this idea. And instead of pajamas, Daniel goes to sleep in a rubber ducky. So something crazy must have happened before for the scene to play out this way. And so, we as the audience get our big revelation. Shadows have this one rule that's not to be broken. They're not able to harm their casters. They're there to protect.
You have to stop this. You and all your shadow friends. Somebody Somebody's gonna get hurt.
You worry too much. A shadow's job is to protect. There's no way a shadow would ever hurt a caster.
And it'd be all fine and dandy if it didn't serve as not so subtle foreshadowing. As just a few scenes later, we find out that avoiding harming casters is not something the movie's grand villain is in any way concerned about. Remember Roberto, this guy at the counter here from the clip I played 4 minutes and 45 seconds ago? Well, here's him being controlled, or I don't know, maybe even killed? Hard to tell. By the evil shadow villain. We didn't get a full name for him. Is that Roberto's shadow that went rogue and felt the need to punish his caster? Or was it someone else's shadow entirely that got displaced somehow and found out he's able to jump between different people? I think that's where I'm gonna end the story part. Some more info about this evil baddie is actually known, but I don't really want to reveal any more spoilery details. So, how did we get here? Why was this banger of a movie completely canceled by Dreamworks halfway through its production? And is there any possibility it could actually come back? Well, let's start over at the beginning. The general concept for the movie, as well as its title, were released on December 10th, 2010. At the time, Dreamworks was confident they could deliver Me and My Shadow, so they scheduled it for a March 2013 release date. I'm sorry. It's just, we could have had it back then. Bill Damashk, the co-president of DreamWorks Animation that oversaw its production, noted how the team was looking forward to combine the time-honored tradition of hand-drawn animation with the magical sophistication of computer graphics in ways that have never been experienced by audiences before. Damashk got it. It will be super challenging, but very cool. Yeah, it would have been very cool indeed. And so, work on the animated feature began. Mark Dindal was set to direct. And you might know him from some of the projects he's led, such as Emperor's New Groove, Chicken Little, and the Garfield movie. Still somewhat fresh off the presses as it came out just last year. All are absolute bangers. And that includes Chicken Little. I will die on this hill. But of course, things had to go downhill somewhere. And it's not because Mark Dindal did Chicken Little, okay? It's not because of that. The real rupture started 2 years later, in 2012, with a rival project all within DreamWorks. Yes, Mr. Peabody and Sherman. While there was no direct bad blood between these two projects, they were being worked on at the same time. And contrary to Me and My Shadow, Mr. Peabody was a project that DreamWorks and director Rob Minkowski had in development for several years. Ideas to turn the classic J-Word cartoons into an animated feature were floated years earlier, but it wasn't until the early 2010s when the project finally found some traction. So yeah, you can kind of start to see where the first cracks begin to appear. When it was time to pitch both projects to the executives, they were way more supportive of Mr. Peabody than some Daniel's 2D shadow antics. To add insult to injury, the CEO of DreamWorks, Jeffrey Katzenberg, fell asleep during Me and My Shadow's test screen. And when he woke up, he scrambled to say it just wasn't the $200 million movie he had wanted. I kinda see why. One of them was based on an actual TV show that people know and might care about. But I still don't like that decision nonetheless. It shouldn't have been a deciding factor. But it wasn't all bad at the time. Sure, Me and My Shadow was delayed, and the release dates between projects were swapped, but the movie was still set to be happening. It's just that Daniel and Shadowdan were now supposed to make their debut a little later, in March 2014, and with Mark Dindal stepping down from the project. Maybe he just really wanted to make Chicken Little too. Mr. Peabody then got pushed back a little bit and was finally released in 2014. It did well, but underperformed, which compounded on top of other financial issues the company was going through, and had the whole of DreamWorks in a bit of a financial pickle. To remedy that, in 2015, they underwent corporate restructuring, laying off over 500 employees and having Katzenberg step down as the CEO. The old DreamWorks that was so passionate about this film sadly left, and the project was canned for good. And by good, I mean a few months. Because yeah, those that weren't laid off still wanted Me and My Shadow to happen. That should tell you about the quality of this concept in this movie. Whether it was honoring their departed colleagues or sharing the same excitement and hype, something led to this project being quickly revitalized that same year. Only this time, the fabled Edgar Wright Scott Pilgrim and Shaun of the Dead fame, was set to step up to the occasion and overtake leadership. The concept was being retooled, rewritten, and put simply redone. Edgar Wright created freehold drafts of a different story, a new take on a previously developed concept about shadows. Me and My Shadow changed the name to just Shadows, way less catchy if you ask me, and got put in limbo due to management changes. Yeah, again. Dreamworks got bought out by Comcast in 2017, and the movie died. Officially, and for good, that seems. Okay, you could be watching this in the future, way off. Me and My Shadow is in theaters. Hear Josh Gad, Bill Hader, the whole bunch. When it got finalized, changed a bit here and there. Heidi is an actual character in the film, not just a caricature of a person. And it all was just moments ago streamed directly into your eyeballs. And if so, I'm happy for you. I wish we could trade places. I hope this masterpiece that was once in the making sees the light of day. And it's not like it's impossible. If you've seen my other videos, you might say I'm just hopping on Copium again. And sometimes, or more specifically the one time of Overwatch, that was true. Video on that coming soon. This time though, I feel like the chances are getting higher and higher of this movie release. Case in point, Nimona, another great animated film based on a novel by Andy Stevenson that was completely scrapped at one point. Blue Sky, the original studio behind it, they got bought out by Disney and laid off every single person. People thought out of every canceled movie, this was surely the most dead. No competition, Blue Sky went under. Well, lo and behold, Netflix got the rights for Nimona's adaptation, took all the scrapped work from previous animators, changed the art style a bit. That's really the only nitpick I can give them. It's a bit worse, a tad bland looking. But it was put out there in full and turned out to be super good. It's not like Dreamworks didn't do it before. The Croods, if you even remember them, were a redeveloped project once called Crude Awakening. So they've dabbled in this resurrecting old ideas thing and easily do it again. People are out there making fan art, animations, fake unseen clips from Me and My Shadow using bits of audio from other works Bill Hader's been on. It's hard to find many cancelled animated projects that garnered such a cult following. With this one, I see it. It really is special. Maybe it's because it's marrying these two great animation techniques in a way that represents something truly original. Again, I find it hard to compare it to anything other than Roger Rabbit, and it means a lot when you can say something like that in the day and age of regurgitated sequels, cheap cash grabs, and the general creative bankruptcy of Hollywood. Don't get me started on the live-action How to Train Your Dragon. Get this thing off my screen, editor! And by editor, I mean me, just from the future. Me and My Shadow could also come back as part of the new wave of alternative and stylized animated movies. With a few small tweaks, it would fit in perfect with the likes of Puss in Boots, The Last Wish, or Into the Spider-Verse. The context of shifting art styles in animation is something I talk a bit about in my video on photorealism video games. If you're interested in both, you might want to check it out. Me and My Shadow, for a lot of people, represented an innovative use of animation that allowed for genuinely new ways of storytelling. Distorted 2D projections in a 3D environment, mixing and blending with virtual shadows, would have been a true technical feat, and could have possibly advanced technology in animated movies going forward, maybe leading to more experiments of this caliber in other big-budget production. And while unlikely, it could have sparked at least a small comeback of mainstream hand-drawn animation. I think that too is why people care so much. Because of giant box office hits like Ice Age and Toy Story, and great attempts at a hand-drawn revival that ultimately didn't end up moving the needle enough, or just straight up flopped. Because of all that, the major players went back to focusing solely on 3D and computer-generated films. And yes, before any of you start to angrily type out how 2D movies never actually went away, I am aware. I know there are, for example, tons of indie movies that didn't give up on it, or blended in interesting ways like Claws, The Boy and the Heron, and many, many, many more. Like, I love 2D animation. Full stop. 3D is cool in its own right and works much better in certain scenarios, but it's Disney's Hercules that's in my top 3 movies of all time, and not Toy Story, for example. I'm not too hopeful Me and My Shadow would have been the thing that would have pushed big animation studios back towards 2D, but I do believe it's a movie that could have moved that needle, and should still totally happen today. It's been 15 years, or more, depending on when you're watching this, but it's not too late. So, I don't know. And this video to Dreamworks, I guess. Maybe that will change their mind once and for all. And if you somehow enjoyed all of this, subscribe.